Have you ever stopped everything you were doing to learn something new? Maybe you bought a book, maybe you attended an entire course, maybe you spent weeks studying a skill, and then nothing has really changed. You haven't become more skilled. You haven't become wiser. You haven't gotten any closer to mastering what you so desperately wanted. And the worst part, you probably blamed yourself. You thought you weren't smart enough, that you lacked discipline, that it simply wasn't for you. But know that the problem isn't you. The problem is something deeper, something that is silently destroying anyone's ability to master anything. Over 2,000 years ago, a man named Confucius opened the most important book of Eastern philosophy with a single sentence. A sentence so simple that most people don't even realize the weight it carries. Learning and constantly reviewing what you've learned, isn't that a joy? Does it seem obvious? But it's not. Because most people, including you, including me, do the exact opposite of that. And today, I'm going to show you the 3 reasons why people never master anything, and more importantly, what to do to change that. Chapter 1. The Paradox of Modern Learning. We live in the most information-rich era in human history. Today, you have access to more knowledge than any emperor, philosopher, or genius in history ever had. The contents of an entire library from the last century now fit in your pocket. And even so, research shows that most people abandon a new hobby in less than 3 months. That the completion rate for online courses is only around 3 to 10%. That most books purchased never get past the first half. Another study showed that the more learning options people have available, the less committed they are to any one of those options. It's the paradox of choice applied to knowledge. Abundance breeds paralysis, and paralysis breeds mediocrity. More information, less mastery. This is the paradox of modern learning, and cognitive science has an explanation for this, but it's probably not the one you expect. The problem isn't the quantity of information. The problem is how people relate to what they learn. Confucius called this 学而时习之, which means learning and constantly reviewing what has been learned at the right time with real intention. The key word in that sentence isn't learn, it's review. And this concept has 3 layers, 3 levels of review that, when ignored, explain exactly why people never master anything. Today I'm going to introduce you to the 3 layers through the story of someone who experienced it the hard way. Chapter 2. The Story of Nolan. Nolan was 22 years old and had a plan. He lived in Portland, Oregon, in a small apartment he shared with 2 college classmates. I had just dropped out of my business administration course in my 2nd year, not because I was lazy, but because I was sure the world belonged to those who learned on their own. He had read about Elon Musk, about Steve Jobs, about Marcus Aurelius. He had watched videos about polymaths, about self-taught individuals, about people who had mastered extraordinary skills, and Nolan wanted to be one of them. The problem was that Nolan had started and abandoned more things than he could count on the fingers of both hands. Guitar 2 months stopped, programming 6 weeks stopped, Japanese 3 weeks stopped, painting 1 month stopped, chess 2 weeks stopped, creative writing, started 4 different projects, didn't finish any, and each time he stopped, he had a new theory. That wasn't for me. I didn't have the right talent. The timing wasn't right. The method was bad. What Nolan didn't realize, and what no one had ever explained about learning, was that the problem wasn't the skills he chose. It was something much more fundamental, something he unconsciously repeated with each attempt. But deep down, in the early hours of the morning when the apartment was quiet and he was staring at the ceiling, one question always came back. What's wrong with me? It was on one of those nights that he opened his phone, started scrolling through his feed without thinking, and stumbled upon a video of an older man playing traditional Japanese music with an instrument Nolan had never seen before. The shamisen. It wasn't imposing virtuosity, it was something quieter than that. It was the presence of someone who had spent decades becoming one with that instrument. The comments were full of questions about how that man had gotten there, and in one of the comments, there was a link to a short documentary about him. Nolan clicked, and what he heard from that old man, named Haruto, a master who had lived in Kyoto for 50 years, completely changed the way he understood learning. Chapter 3. The first reason you don't do the intellectual review. In the documentary, a young journalist asked Haruto what the biggest mistake modern students make is. The old man did not hesitate. They think learning is about moving forward, but true wisdom always begins by going back. Nolan paused the video. He rewound it 3 seconds. He listened again. What Haruto was describing was the first layer of Confucius's concept, intellectual revision. Intellectual revision isn't about rereading a book out of obligation. It's not about reviewing material before a test. It's the practice of questioning what you already believe you know. Think about it. When you learn something new, your brain creates connections, associations, structures of meaning, and these structures remain there, stored, and you begin to act as if these structures were permanent, as if what you understood the first time were the complete truth. But it's not. Neuroscience has a name for this: illusion of competence. You read about something, you understand the idea superficially, and your brain registers it as case closed. You feel competent, but when the real situation arises, when you need to use that knowledge for real, you realize that the knowledge simply isn't there. There's even a phenomenon called the curse of knowledge. The more superficially you know about something, the harder it becomes to learn it in depth, because your brain has already created categories, formed opinions, and built mental shortcuts. And these shortcuts are obstacles disguised as familiarity. You know the name of something, so you think you know what it is. You've read about something, so you think you understand it. But knowing the name isn't the same as mastering it. Do you know why? Because you never came back. You've never looked at what you've learned through the eyes of someone more mature, someone with more experience, someone with more questions. Confucius said that revisiting what you know and discovering something new in it is the mark of a true master. It's not intellectual weakness, it's the most sophisticated form of learning. And the parallel with the Japanese concept of Kaizen is inevitable here. Most people understand Kaizen as improve 1% every day going forward, but what few realize is that authentic Kaizen presupposes constant review of what has already been done. You cannot continuously improve without first honestly examining what is wrong with what you have already built. Kaizen without intellectual review is just accumulation disguised as progress. Nolan realized at that moment that every time he learned something new, he thought he was making progress. But he never revisited what he had learned. He never questioned it. He never went back. And without that anchor, everything he learned slipped away. Like sand you try to hold with your open hands. Intellectual revision is this closing of the hands. But that's only the first layer. Chapter 4. The second reason you don't do the practical review. Nolan continued watching. At one point in the documentary, one of Haruto's students, a young American who had moved to Japan to study with him, was interviewed. The student said something that stuck in Nolan's mind for days. "I thought training meant learning new things. Haruto-san taught me that training means redoing the same things until those things stop being techniques and become you." This is the second layer of Confucius's concept, the practical review. And this is where most people make the most obvious mistake. Think about your relationship with any skill you've ever tried to develop. How much time did you spend learning new things versus deliberately repeating what you had already learned? The answer, in most cases, is frightening. People live in a constant state of acquisition, a new course, a new book, a new tutorial, a new method. But true skill doesn't come from acquisition. It comes from conscious repetition. There's a concept in Japanese philosophy called shuhari. If you follow my channel, you're already familiar with it. This concept describes the 3 stages of mastering anything, and it works for any human skill. Shu. You follow the rules, you repeat, you imitate. You don't improvise, you internalize. You start breaking the rules consciously, because you understand them so deeply that you know when they should be bent. Durase. You transcend the rules. What you do no longer has a name. It's simply you. But this is the crucial point. You cannot reach Ha without having completed Shu, and Shu requires practical review. It requires going back. It requires repetition that is not boredom, but refinement. Imagine a musician who spends 6 hours a day playing the same songs they already know. without paying attention to any detail. They'll remain mediocre forever. Now imagine a musician who takes 30 minutes a day and returns to a single note, a single chord, and observes with complete attention what's happening. This second musician will go much further, not because they practice more, but because they practice with more presence. Researcher K. Anders Ericsson spent decades studying what separates experts from amateurs in fields such as music, chess, medicine, and sports, and the central conclusion is, it's not the quantity of hours that matters, it's the quality of attention you bring to each repetition. Experts don't practice more, they practice better, and practicing better often means going back to basics with fresh eyes, not rushing to the next level. Nolan thought about the months he had studied programming. He knew the names of 50 different libraries, but he couldn't write a simple program without copying from Google. He had accumulated vocabulary without ever developing fluency, and vocabulary without fluency is not a skill, it's a collection. Practical review is what transforms a collection into mastery, but the third layer was still missing, the deepest one, the most ignored. Chapter 5. The Third Reason. You don't do the existential review. The documentary was nearing its end when Haruto spoke directly to the camera. The journalist had asked, "What do you do differently from your students who haven't yet reached where you are?" And the old man smiled, a calm, unhurried smile, and said, "Every day before going to sleep, I ask myself 3 things. Was I honest with what I learned today? Did I apply what I learned in the past? And did I become a little more true to who I want to be?" Nolan stared at the screen for a long time after that, because he recognized that phrase, not from a modern book, not from a podcast, but from somewhere much older. And when he researched it, he found out. Those 3 questions came directly from Zhengzi, one of Confucius's main disciples. In Analects, the book that opens with the phrase about constant revision, Zhengzi says, "I examine myself daily on 3 points, whether I have been faithful in my dealings with others, whether I have been sincere in my relationships with friends, and whether I have practiced what the master taught me." This is existential revision, and it's completely different from the other 2. Intellectual revision happens in the mind, practical revision happens in the hands, but existential revision happens in the character. This review asks not what you have learned, but who you are becoming, and this distinction is devastating for most people, because most people learn skills as if they were external things, as if they were tools that you pick up, use, and put back in the drawer. But truly mastering something changes who you are. A musician who masters an instrument doesn't just play music. He thinks musically. He hears the world differently. He has become something different. A writer who masters writing doesn't produce texts. He processes existence through words. He can no longer help but perceive narrative structure in everything he experiences. Skill changes you, or it hasn't been mastered yet. And existential review is the process of deliberately following this transformation, of asking oneself, am I becoming who I want to be through this learning? Or am I just collecting skills without integrating any of them? There is a stark difference between someone who can do many things moderately well and someone who has mastered something profoundly. And that difference is rarely about talent. It's about the quality of self-examination. The Japanese samurai who spent decades practicing the same technique wasn't being limited. He was being honest with himself. He knew that each execution revealed something the previous one had hidden. That mastery isn't a destiny, it's a continuous deepening that's only possible for those who have the courage to ask themselves, who have I become and who do I want to be? Most people never ask themselves this question. And that's why even when they learn a lot, they continue to feel empty. They continue to feel like imposters. They continue to think they never truly master anything. Because mastery isn't just about what you know how to do, it's about who you become through learning. Chapter 6. What Science and Philosophy Say. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman from Stanford University states that real learning doesn't happen during studying, but during rest and review. The brain consolidates memories and skills primarily during periods when you stop and revisit what has been processed. Ignoring review is literally preventing the brain from recording what you've learned. Carol Dweck, a Stanford psychologist and author of the growth mindset concept, goes further. She states that the people who truly develop are not those who avoid mistakes, but those who revisit their mistakes with genuine curiosity. The difference between stagnation and growth lies in the willingness to go back. Cal Newport, a professor at MIT and author of Deep Work, writes that most people confuse familiarity with competence. You read about something, you feel familiar with the concept, and your brain registers that as, "I already know." But familiarity and mastery are completely different things. Mastery requires friction. It requires revision. It requires returning to the discomfort of the basics until it ceases to be uncomfortable. Confucius said all of this 2,500 years ago with a single sentence. Learning and constantly reviewing what you've learned, isn't that a joy? The word joy he uses isn't superficial pleasure. It's the profound contentment of someone who realizes that what they thought they understood was only the surface of something much vaster. It's the joy of discovering that you haven't even come close to the bottom yet. Chapter 7. The detail that changes everything. There's a detail in this story that most people ignore. Confucius did not write the Analects. It was his disciples who recorded his teachings after his death, and they chose to open the book, the very first lesson of all, with that exact sentence about revision. Not with a phrase about leadership, not with a phrase about virtue, not with a phrase about politics or society, with a sentence about revision. Think about what that means. Confucius' disciples, who had studied with him for years and knew him better than anyone else, decided that the most fundamental teaching of all was this: that going back is more important than moving forward, that revisiting is more powerful than discovering, that the deepest joy of learning lies not in learning new things, but in realizing, by revisiting what you already knew, that you never truly understood it. And Nolan understood this that early morning in his quiet Portland apartment, watching a video of an old Japanese man playing the shamisen. He hadn't given up the guitar because he lacked talent. He had left because he never came back. He had never revisited the first song he learned with more mature eyes. He had never questioned what he thought he understood. He had never wondered who he was becoming through that learning. He had simply accumulated new information and called it progress. And then, for the first time, Nolan turned off his phone. He picked up the guitar that had been sitting in the corner of his room for months, and he played the first thing he had learned as a teenager. 3 chords, simple, ugly. And he stayed there, repeating those 3 chords, paying attention to every detail he had never noticed before. How his fingers pressed the strings, where the friction was, where the resistance was. And for the first time in years, he wasn't in a hurry to learn the next thing. He was present in what he already knew, and he discovered that he knew far less than he thought. And that was exactly the beginning. So let's recap what we've seen today. Confucius, more than 2,000 years ago, opened the most important book of Eastern philosophy with a single idea: to learn and constantly review what has been learned. And this idea has 3 layers, 3 types of review, which, when ignored, explain why people never master anything. The first is intellectual revision. You don't question what you already believe you know. You move forward without verifying the foundation. You accumulate new information on top of a base that has never been tested. True Kaizen begins with the courage to look back and ask, what do I think I know that perhaps I don't really know? The second is the practical review.